Many undergraduate students learn about writing in university the hard way, and only a very small percentage of them ever receive an A on their written assignments. And the reason they can't achieve top marks in university is they're high school teachers. But the real tragedy isn't the low grades, it's the missed opportunity to discover the life-changing benefits of academic writing. Because the fact is that writing in university is nothing like writing in high school. And to show you the difference between high school and university writing, I need to go back to when I was in high school.
When I was a young warthog!
Hey, shut up. So when I was in grade school, I received a lot of encouragement about my writing. I would love writing stories and sharing them with friends, and by the time I got to high school, I even had my own column in the local newspaper. So when I came to university, I was pretty confident and self-assured about my writing abilities. Writing was a breeze. I'll never forget the first essay that I got back in university. It was actually in an English literature class, and somewhere along the way, I must have introduced an idea with the phrase, "I think." And the comment that I got back from my professor in the margins said, "Who are you?" I was so offended. Who are you? I'm William. This is what I think. Here's my opinion. This is gold. Pearls before swine. I really couldn't understand the comment, but instead of getting mad at my professor, I took some time and realized that there was something about writing in university that I didn't understand. So for my next paper, I did what I encourage all undergraduate students to do, ideally before you write your first paper, which is to make an appointment with the University Writing Center. The university where I teach has a writing center, and the one you're attending probably does as well. This is a place where you can have a consultation with a writing tutor who can help you develop your paper and point out some of these things before it makes it to your professor's desk. And I really wish I had done that sooner. But once I started working with these writing tutors, I came to understand what this professor was looking for. It wasn't my spelling, it wasn't my grammar. These professors weren't asking me to write something better. They wanted me to write something different. And that's when I realized that as good as I had done in high school, I was totally unprepared for writing in university. Now, you might know the following expression. If someone asks you what time it is, don't tell them how to build a watch. Well, when it comes to academic writing, the opposite is true. Now, that doesn't mean your professors are asking you to write more than necessary. In fact, university professors will often tell you to not go over 2 pages or 5 pages as the assignment may be. But this expression just means that when it comes to academic writing, there is a different task. There's something different we have to do. So imagine your high school teacher had given you an assignment to write an essay about a watch. How would you begin that essay? Well, if you were in high school, you might have one paragraph about how this is the minute hand, it represents the minutes, and then there's the dial over here, and that's how you get it going, and the numbers on the watch range from 1 to 12. You might have a paragraph explaining each of those ideas. And the crazy thing is, that kind of writing would pass, because in high school, we write for the sake of writing. High school teachers give us feedback about spelling, organization, vocabulary. It doesn't matter what we write, so long as we write it well. But in university, that kind of response wouldn't work because the task of writing is completely different. It's not enough to just summarize all the parts. In fact, unless the writing assignment specifically uses the word summary, what your university professors are looking for is not a summary, but an analysis. In other words, don't just say what something is, write about how it works. Another word for that kind of analysis is argument. In university writings, we have arguments. Now, by argument, I don't just mean a verbal fight with a friend about what's better or worse. Instead, an argument is something much more systematic. And it's the kind of thing that careful readers expect of you, especially in an academic context. Now, before I show you how to write an argument, you might be wondering, why should I have to write an argument at all? I know what I think. Aren't my points valid on their own? To understand why that's not the case in university, let's turn out the lights. Now here's a flashlight. What do you see? From where you're standing, you see this part, but me standing over here with my own flashlight, I see that part. We each have only partial knowledge, and so it's important that we share our ideas with each other so that we can get a view of the bigger picture. And the way that we share those ideas with each other are arguments. Why arguments? Why couldn't I just publish an essay that says exactly what I see? Why go through the trouble of putting my ideas into this thing called an argument? So I teach at a science and tech research institute, so I'm used to working with scientists and engineers. And whenever I'm explaining this point, I usually like to draw their attention to the scientific method. So I'll ask students, like, why do we publish research? Why do we go through the trouble of writing up research and publishing it in journals? And actually what they'll often say at the beginning is that we do it in order to get prestige and get to advance our career. And to be honest, partially they're right, but that's not the whole story. Ideally, the reason that we publish our research in these scientific journals is to invite others to critique our research. That's how we advance as a collective. I do my best with my scientific research and I publish it, and then everybody tries to attack me, to take me down. And that's a healthy thing. It's really stressful when it's happening, but other people argue with my research and show how I did a bad job, and they try to break it apart as much as possible. But anything they can't break apart, anything that remains after everybody attacks it, that part is solid, and that's the part that everybody has to accept now as scientific knowledge. It's just considered true. If nobody can break the ideas apart, if nobody can break my research and findings apart, then it's now true, and the community has to accept it as true. So that's the reason that we share our ideas in the form of an argument. But the thing is, you can't answer all questions with the scientific method. In the hard sciences, we can design experiments to tell us what the world is like, but there are other questions that we can't answer using a science experiment, such as what is good or bad, what is the meaning of art, which one is better or worse. These are things that cannot be answered in a science lab. So the reason that we write our ideas in the form of these arguments is to invite other people to disagree with us. They're going to attack our ideas, and an argument is what shows other people not only what we think, but why we think it. In other words, the evidence and the reasoning that we use to develop our opinions. So this idea of critique and peer review that we know in the scientific method, well, it's the same thing in our academic essays. It's just that there are some questions that you can answer with scientific experiments and other questions which you can't, and we can only develop them through arguments. So we write in the form of arguments to invite other people to fight with us so that together we can find out what's true. Okay, so now we know that your professor is different from your high school teacher because your professor wants you to write an argument. So how do you write one? Well, basically an argument has three crucial pieces. A claim. A truth claim. In other words, it's saying that something is true. Now, ideally, that something is going to make the reader say, that's interesting. I'd like to know more. If the reader can't say that to your claim, you don't have a claim. So for example, the statement, water is wet. The reader is not going to read that and say, that's interesting. I'd like to know more. Like, it's just true. You don't need evidence to support it. You don't need to show your reasoning. The reader doesn't need to spend energy reading what you've written. It's not worth anything. It's not a claim. A claim should be significant. It should develop our understanding of the topic. And of course, it should be non-obvious, which means that the reader is going to want to see how you arrived at that claim. What's your evidence? What's your reasoning? And finally, it should be debatable. It should be something that somebody else could disagree with. So that's how you know you have a good claim. It should be significant, not obvious, and debatable. So those are the three features of a claim, and if you make an interesting, non-obvious claim, it's gonna have to be backed up by evidence. Otherwise, the reader won't accept it. And so if our definition of a claim is something that somebody else can disagree with, then the next thing the reader is going to want to see is Have you thought about the limitations and objections to your claim? What are the counter arguments? Somewhere out there are people who disagree with you. So before you just move on from your own claim, why don't you spend a little bit of time thinking about what are those people going to say and respond to those people? You would say something like, of course, my critics would argue X, but what they fail to understand is A, B, and C, and so therefore my claim is still correct. And this actually becomes a big critique of university writing, because a lot of people say that one of the worst things about academic writing is that it's so filled with all of these qualifiers, these hedges. People don't say water is wet, they say something like, it seems as though water could most probably be wet under these circumstances, right? They qualify everything to bring their level of certainty down from 100% to 70, 60, 50%, depending on the strength of their claim. And yeah, it doesn't make the best reading experience, and it's kind of weak, but again, the reason that they do this is because writing in university is necessarily argumentative. If you make a claim and it's too strong, you haven't thought about the limitations of your claim, you haven't thought about what people who disagree with you are going to say, then people are gonna they're either gonna reject what you've written or they're gonna get really mad and attack your writing. So careful writers in university consider the strength of their claims and they make sure to adjust it appropriately using hedges such as sometimes, usually, generally, or when appropriate, they'll use boosters, such as absolutely, strongly, certainly. So importantly, you want to bring your writing into conversation with others. Address your critics and show that you've thought carefully about the strength of your claim. So if you've taken one thing from this video, I really hope that it is writing in university. Sure, it is different, and your professors are making different demands on you, but these are good demands. You should be really excited about this opportunity. No longer is writing just a matter of using perfect grammar and spelling. Suddenly, you're doing important intellectual work. Writing is not writing. Writing is thinking. In high school, we write about what we already know, but in university, we write to discover ideas and then to share those discoveries with a community of people who are just like us, people who are committed to finding the truth together. We write about these discoveries in the form of an argument so that others can test our discoveries, try to break them apart, and if they can't break it apart, then they must accept our discoveries as new knowledge. Now that you know the major differences between high school and university writing, you probably want to get started in writing your own academic report, which is why you need to check out this video right here, because it's going to show you exactly how to get started with an academic report. So be sure to go check it out.